Blood West is a recently released immersive stealth first-person shooter from Hyperstrange. In this game, you play as an undead gunslinger in a version of the Wild West that is filled with eldritch horrors. You will traverse 3 separate environments that are each contained within medium-sized open worlds, and you are free to explore every corner at your own pace and in any order. Blood West isn't a full-blown immersive sim, but the stealth elements make the game feel a lot like Thief with guns, just minus some of the tools, environmental manipulation, and the hiding in the shadows aspect that was integral to those games. However, you can toss stones to distract enemies, you can sneak up on them in order to perform melee kills, or you can take them out from a distance. Oh yeah, and the protagonist is voiced by Steven Russell, aka Garrett from the original Thief games, and Corvo from Dishonored 2. And he does not phone it in at all. He absolutely nails his performance as the undead.
Here's some friendly advice. Don't get back up.
In fact, all of the voice acting in Blood West is quite good, and it really helps the immersion. Our man Gianni does a great job as the Totem of Souls.
This badge belonged to the last sheriff of this little town. He was as brave as he was oblivious to the real danger. His beliefs in justice and law allowed him to resist the curse for longer than almost anybody else, and yet he fell into the spiraling depths of paranoia. Everybody was a suspect. Everyone could be plotting something evil behind his back. He died fighting cultists he followed into a canyon, not seeing the evil right under his nose.
The NPCs are all fairly interesting, and you can trade with many of them. It was this aspect of the gameplay that got me to start recognizing the various influences on Blood West's design, ARPGs being one of them. Interacting with the inventory and shop systems reminded me of playing Diablo 2, as did the perk system, which serves as a way to build your character how you want. It's not a skill tree, and it is a pretty basic, light RPG type of system and concept, but the perks do give some pretty substantial buffs that can change the gameplay experience in significant and noticeable ways. For instance, do you want sneaking to be easier? There's a perk for that. Do you want lining up headshots to be easier? There's a perk for that. Do you want to retrieve arrows or crossbow bolts with a reduced chance of them breaking? There's a perk for that too. I think you get the point. From increasing your health or stamina to finding more gold items in the game world, Blood West's perk system has a heap of upgrades that really allow the player to define their strengths. And the fact that you are only given 3 skill points to spend at each level up, and you don't level up that often, means that these choices are extremely important. So it's good to think hard about how you want to play this game. Oh, and also, pulling up the perk menus, inventory, map, and journal does not pause the game, so make sure that you are in a safe place before you do so. Speaking of strengths, I would highly recommend that you put points into making headshots easier to nail, and make sure that your aim is true, because headshots are of the utmost importance, since body shots don't do nearly as much damage, and ammo can just be scarce at times. Make sure you are getting rid of enemies quickly and efficiently, and also so that you aren't wasting ammo. In the second area of Blood West, I was able to acquire the crossbow, and I relied heavily on this weapon for the remainder of the game. To make the crossbow an even greater tool, I invested in the perk that lowered the chance of bolts breaking when I picked them up, as I had mentioned before. And I never had a bolt break for the rest of the game after I did so. This made it so that I never had to worry about my medium to long range ammo supply. And the crossbow is also just great for headshots. In the last chapter, I found an even better variation of the crossbow that did higher base damage and insanely higher headshot damage, which allowed me to take out even some of the tankiest enemies with just one crossbow bolt, especially when firing golden bolts. Speaking of weapons, Blood West has a whole host of them, with all of these weapon types having multiple variations that you can either find or buy. In the melee category, you have knives and axes, but there are also several guns, including pistols, revolvers, lever-action rifles, which I found very useful in the first area, bows and arrows, crossbows, shotguns, tomahawks, and a crazy powerful buffalo rifle. Then, to make combat even more interesting, you have access to different ammo types, which include standard ammunition, fire ammo, gold ammo that does double damage, silver ammo, which is effective against certain enemies. Be sure to read the notes you find in the environment, by the way, for help with this. And in some cases, explosive ammo. Of course, there are also sticks of dynamite and Molotov cocktails that you can use. And by the way, enemies don't know how to use ladders in Blood West, so you can just aggro a bunch of enemies at once, lead them to the bottom of a ladder, and send them all straight to hell with a stick of dynamite or a Molotov. You can thank me later for this piece of advice. Another important thing to note is that I personally found carrying a long to medium range weapon like a lever action rifle or crossbow or just a standard bow and arrow and a shotgun to be the best strategy. That way, if I failed to kill an enemy at a distance, I could always just switch to my shotgun to end them at close range if they were rushing me. And if that wasn't enough already, you can also have 3 trinkets equipped at a time. These trinkets can be found in the environment retrieved from enemy corpses. You search enemies, by the way, after you kill them in this game, as they usually have certain items on them. Or you can buy trinkets from NPCs. And they add certain effects to your stats, all of which are upgrades at varying levels of usefulness, but some come with negative effects as well. So you will sometimes find yourself weighing the pros and cons of having a certain trinket equipped. And much like the perk system, these trinkets can add anything from increased health to slow health regeneration, increased stamina regeneration, faster movement speed, increased headshot damage, so on and so forth. There are so many trinkets in this game that do all kinds of different things. But on top of that, there are also several single-use items that you can buy or find that give temporary buffs, many of which are potions, and these can be anything from health potions to potions that remove soul flaws. Ah yes, soul flaws. Bloodwest has another system where sometimes, although in my case it happened every time, but in general, from what I've heard, sometimes after you die, a flaw will be placed on your soul. And what this is a debuff that can affect your rate of gaining experience points, for instance, or your ability to successfully be stealthy, or the likelihood that you will start bleeding out after taking damage, among a few other things. For this reason, try not to die too much, because even though you are undead, having to be revived does take a toll, and falling in battle has its consequences. Aside from potions, you can also remove soul flaws by completing certain tasks for the Totem of Souls, which is a character that is also capable of giving you a buff to a specific attribute at the cost of a single gold coin, which are not super plentiful in the game world. Speaking of the game world, there are 3 of them, 3 areas that you will explore, all of which are absolutely dripping with atmosphere. The first area is the classic desert environment, complete with cacti, canyons, mines, caverns, a farm, a native burial ground, and a ghost town. The second chapter sees the undead gunslinger take on even more eldritch horrors in a foggy swamp in the deep south. This environment in particular made me feel very uneasy, just with its soundscape and aesthetic design. And the third area is a mountainous alpine landscape, the type of environment that I am actually quite familiar with in the real world. Throughout these areas, you will be tasked with retrieving cursed items,
That's a nice little thing.
rescuing NPCs, gathering objects necessary for performing rituals, and doing other tasks for the characters that you will interact with over the game's duration. Yes, these are all fetch quests, but this isn't really a bad thing because it simply allows for the combat and exploration to shine. At the end of each chapter, there is a boss fight, and each boss fight is unique in both aesthetics and gameplay design. In each area, you'll be introduced to new enemy types, but enemies from previous areas will often show up from time to time as well, and this means that there is a lot of enemy variety. Yes, they are all similar in that they all have ranged attacks and melee attacks, but they all differ in their aesthetic design and specific behaviors. Some enemies will run away from you before attacking, and others will become more aggressive if you shoot off a mask that they are wearing or a certain part of their body. Some enemies will shoot you, others will spit acid at you, and some will swipe at you with long, nasty claws. Hell, there is even an enemy type that can go invisible, so have fun with that one. The undead gunslinger will encounter everything from the undead to birdmen, centipede men, spirits, wendigos, weird mutant crocodiles, weird dog-like monsters, cultists, and boo-hags. Man, the boo-hags are especially freaky looking. I really like the design of this enemy. And much like in the Thief games, some enemies will speak and often repeat specific lines as they walk around.
Must find more.
In fact, most of the enemies in Blood West have specific audio cues, which is a great piece of game design that I love to see, and it can be seen in games like Doom as well, as these allow the player to determine which enemy types are close by before they are even seen.
Hellish spawn!
This is also complemented by environmental noises and a great ambient soundtrack. The sound design in this game truly is excellent, which is what you want, especially in a stealth game. So yeah, Blood West is pretty awesome, and it's a pretty beefy game as well if you take your time with it. I explored just about every inch of all 3 maps, and I ended up beating the game in a little over 20 hours, with some several hour-long play sessions taking up big portions of that total playtime. 2023 has really been a great year for gaming, especially in the indie space, but Blood West is a real standout for me, and I will certainly be revisiting it in the future. It is a very enjoyable, spooky, and unique experience, and I highly recommend it. Oh, and by the way, there is also some great art in the loading screens as well. I mean, damn. But yeah, go play Blood West. You won't regret it. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't hesitate to dislike it. Other than that, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to play us out with some fitting blues guitar of my own. Alright, bye.